You definitely know it's one of the off seasons when you start to see a lot of the low-budget action thrillers creeping into theaters. And this week is really no exception, given this week's subject, because in the cold light of day, it essentially is a low-budget action thriller. Now, in the case of the story, the best way I can describe the story is that it's essentially a twist on the Taken concept. Except instead of having a grizzled old veteran going around constantly saying, "Where is she? Where is she?" You've essentially got Henry Cavill, who's essentially one of the people who's supposed to be kidnapped, and then basically he's the one who has to go and rescue his family. And if this was a pure Taken clone, it probably would have had Bruce Willis in the same role as Liam Neeson, which they almost tried to tweak it as, but Bruce Willis is literally only in the first 20 minutes of the film. Those 20 minutes are pretty good, but even then, not really enough to make the whole movie experience worth it. Because it falls into a lot of the same cliches that most action thrillers fall into. Most notably, the no weapons training yet is suddenly a badass cliche. And again, they tried to remedy that, but in the attempts to remedy that, there were parts of the film where they almost forgot that. And that was the biggest thing I noticed with the story, is just that it's just your fairly standard action thriller. I mean, there's not much to really say about it. Now, in the case of cinematography, it's fairly standard. It's just basically, oh, they know what they're doing, but there are these two shots that really annoyed me. They're basically sort of they're essentially this handheld 360-degree pan where they're going all around until they reveal the actor who was behind the cameraman. The thing is, the shots are really shaky because it's handheld, and they go on for way too long. I mean, really, it's like you're just wanting to shout at the screen, "Cut! Cut!" And the shots don't even establish that much either, because they're kind of showed, oh, look at all the wreckage in the ship from the kidnapping. And you can't even really see it half the time because it's all like, oh, look at the shaking, look at the wreckage from the kidnapping through the shakiness. And those are the only shots that really bothered me, because all the other cinematography is just basically, they basically copied from the action movie cinematography playbook. I mean, a lot of people will probably be making these comparisons, but they essentially took like almost the same type of shot lists from the Bourne movies. That's essentially what you've got cinematography-wise. There wasn't anything else from a technical standpoint that I really noticed, because I don't know, I guess it was the one thing that they did right in the film, because I didn't really notice it. Now, the writing and pacing of this film is just, meh. Again, nothing really unique. I mean, good concept, but it was rough. Really, really rough. It's obviously just another action movie. That's all I can really say about it. As for the acting, again, also meh. It's just like they essentially came in and are doing it for a paycheck. That's the best way I can describe it. That's literally all I can say about In the Cold Light of Day. It has some very weird cinematography choices, some very weird editing choices where they kind of have the same thing where it's like the same shot, but then they cut to the same shot, but things are totally different or something. For some reason, that's become the norm in action films. So yeah, weird cinematography choices, weird editing choices. It's essentially a rip-off of a lot of the Bourne movies. The story is just basically a rip-off of a lot of the other action movies. It's like essentially they took Taken, Bourne, Contraband, threw them all into a blender, and Contraband was already a result of being thrown in a blender. Yeah, this is a really short episode because literally all I can say about In the Cold Light of Day is that it's a generic action film. That's it. It's not something you really should even go to the dollar theaters to see unless you're like really, really bored. Like if you're going to the mall with like your teenage daughter and you have to kill some time while she's hanging out with her friends, maybe. But I don't really recommend this film. There's just not much to it. There really isn't. in an attempt to try to avoid a lot of the cliches. It falls for a whole bunch of other cliches. So on my personal scale, I'm giving In the Cold Light of Day a 3 out of 5. It's watchable, it's enjoyable, but it's just meh. So that's it for this week's episode of Romney's Reviews. I know it's incredibly short this time because, like I said, there wasn't much to say about the film. As for next week, things are kind of all up in the air because we've got a lot of films that are limited release, which is super annoying. I mean, if you've got enough money to advertise in the entire US, just release the film in the entire US. Don't do the whole limited release BS. So yeah, the films that I'm planning to review next week, the film I want to review next week is going to be The Master, but if that doesn't work out, then the backup film is going to be Liberal Arts. Hopefully The Master, because it's actually one of the films I want to see. Liberal Arts is kind of a backup because since this video was made for the college newspaper, I figured it's college related. And yeah, that's it for this week's episode of Romney's Reviews. I hope to see you all next week. See you then. You know what? I'm not satisfied with how short this episode is, so expect a second video. It's a video I shot last week but never got the chance to edit or upload, so yeah, look forward to it. Probably upload it around the same time, so yeah. Again, this was really short. You know what? I'm going to also implement another thing for you. It's going to be a new segment I'd like to call Ask Romney, or Romney FAQs. I haven't quite figured out what to call it yet, but basically you can ask me questions. It can be questions about film, it can be questions about me personally, nothing too personal, because I won't answer them on the internet if it's too personal. And yeah, so in the comments below, post your questions, or you can go to my form spring, Hikari no Senshi. Form spring, YouTube, give me your questions, and in the next couple of weeks, I'll create an episode where I answer your questions. So yeah, hope to see you all next week.